Your resume doesn't get you hired. Your stories do. In most of the interviews, the person on the other side of the table is wondering, can I trust this person? How does this person work under pressure? Do they take initiative? And the best way to answer these questions is not with buzzwords. It's with stories. Your real stories that help you show who you are beyond the resume. And here is where most of the people get stuck. They ramble, they miss sharing the context, and they come straight to the results without telling the why. And they lose the opportunity to share or make an impactful story. And that's why I am going to share with you a framework that will help you bring your stories to life. You might have heard of this framework called STAR, and if you use it well, you have a chance of making a great impact and people will remember you. So, in this video, I'm going to break down what that STAR method is, how to utilize that method and answer a couple of different questions, scenario, hypothetical questions. And in the end, I'll also talk about how you can leverage AI like ChatGPT to strengthen those stories and make an impact. So let's go. Let's decode what STAR actually mean. STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. It's a simple framework that lets you structure your stories clearly, and it also lets you tick all the boxes that an interviewer might be looking for. We use this framework mostly in behavioral questions, questions where you are given a hypothetical situation like, tell us about a time you had to work with a difficult person, or tell us about a time when you helped a client improve their strategy. Um, Now let's focus on all the elements one by one. Number one is situation. Here, you need to set the stage. Talk about where were you working, what team were you in, what exactly was your role. Give us the context. Think about what is it that the interviewer need to know to understand your situation. Number two, task. Now zoom in and talk about the problem, the challenge that you were solving for. Amplify the problem. Tell us about the problem itself. How big was the problem? If not solved, what would have been the impact of that problem? Think about why this problem needed to be solved and what was so hard about solving this problem. Number third, action. This is where you need to spend most of your time. Talk about everything you did to solve the problem, all the actions, all the steps you took to solve that problem. What were the skills you used to solve the situation? So, if you looked into the data, don't just say, I looked into the data. Tell me, what data did you look into? Tell me, what were the platforms you accessed? Tell me, what exactly did that data tell you and how you made decisions after looking at that data or analyzing that data. Tell me the skills you used. So tell me all about everything you did to solve the problem you were trying to solve. And finally, we get to R, which is the result. Here, you are just landing the story and telling us what exactly was the impact of all the steps you took, all the action you did, you take. What happened after that? Was there um, was there a positive impact? Did you land the new client? Did you increase the revenue? Did you improve clients' strategy or results that the client got. Or if it was a failure story, what was the takeaway? What was the key learning that you got out of it? Tell us all about it. So, once again, star, situation, task, action, result, setting the stage in situation, talking about amplifying the problem and what would have been if the problem was not solved. Action, tell us all about what you did to solve that problem. And finally, what happened after you did whatever you did. Yeah, let's be honest. Hiring managers are not just checking whether you are following the star format or not. They're trying to listen for something deeper. They're trying to understand, how do you behave in a given situation? What kind of professional are you during a conflict, when something is at stake, or when collaborating with others? And your star stories are actually like windows that give them insights into what kind of professional are you beyond your resume. They try to check beyond the bullet points on your resume about your professionalism, about your decision making, about the way you work, and how you collaborate with others. And structure is important. Yes, you would want your stories to be concise, to the point, and absolutely clear. But they're also listening in, leaning in to see something else beyond the words. And that is how you talk about those stories. Is there that energy in your voice when you talk about a success story? Is there a twinkle in your eye when you talk about something that you are really proud of? When you talk about your failure stories, do you sound like someone who has learned and grown after that experience? So it's not just the words, it's the tone, it's the confidence, and the authenticity that you exuberate while telling those stories. And it's all part of the storytelling. You don't need to prepare 15 different stories, but you do need a healthy mix. Most of the behavioral interview questions fall into these 5 categories: success, failure, conflict, leadership, and adaptability. Now let's talk about, what do these questions look like? What are the interviewers trying to assess with these questions? And what do you need to do to frame these stories? So, number 1, success story. Tell us about a time you were successful. Now, here, the interviewer is trying to understand, what does success look like to you? What is that success story that you are going to share? And how are you as a professional when it comes to working and delivering your best? So here, when you are telling a success story, of course you are going to talk about and focus a lot on how you solved the problem. But it's also really important for you to let them know how big and intense the problem was. So that's where you set the stage. After sharing the situation, you need to really detail out the task or the problem you were trying to solve. And then it will get easier for you to talk about what actions you took and what results you drove. Number 2, the failure story. Most of the people get really hesitant, uncomfortable with sharing failure stories. But if the interviewer asks you, tell us about a time you failed and what did you learn from it? If you listen and focus on this question, they're talking about your learning. It's lesser about the failure and they understand being human is what failure is all about, right? So it's not so much about you failed, it's about what exactly did you do after that? How did you handle that failure? It's about how did you overcome that failure, and how did that failure and the learning changed you and updated your system in a way that you took better decisions, did your work differently after that failure or example. So you definitely need to talk about the failure, but you also need to stress a lot on the result and show your growth mindset, show how you learned, what you learned, and how that learning has made you a better professional, a better person, a better worker, etc. Third, your third story is about conflict. Now, in Canada, we definitely check people or interview people on their skills and abilities, but culture fit is the most important thing, because when they bring a new team worker within a team, they want to make sure other people are comfortable and gel well with this person. So they need to understand your soft skill of collaboration. How do you work with others? How do you tell us about a time? Question would be, tell us about a time when you had a conflict with a colleague or a manager, and what did you do about it? They want to understand, how do you behave under pressure? How do you keep the needle moving even when there is tension? There is tension in the team, but you still have to work with the same people. How do you go about it? And that's where you need to focus a lot on, how do you drive conversations? How do you navigate difficult conversations? How do you tackle situations where you have to put yourself in other people's shoes and think from their perspective? You need to focus on talking about how progress or moving forward is more important than proving yourself right. You have to talk about the larger good, what is good for the team, and not just what is good or important for one person. Now, the fourth story. The fourth story is about leadership. Tell us about a time when you led a project. They want to understand, do you take initiatives? And how do you behave when you are not the formal leader of a team? How do you gather people? How do you make sure that everybody aligns in a team? That's what they want to hear more about. So talk about your organizational skills. Talk about how you bring people together. Talk about how you guide people, how you instruct people, or also how do you ask the right questions. Fifth story is about adaptability. Tell us about a time you worked in an environment where there were frequent changes. As you know, these days we work in environments where changes are very frequent because of the new technology, because of AI and all of that. And every organization prefer people who are comfortable with change or change heavy environments. And that's why they want to understand, how do you behave when there are frequent changes? How do you behave when there is uncertainty, when the environment is not that clear? And you need to focus on talking about your thought process, talking about your learning ability, talking about your comfortability with the unknown, and your ability to adapt as soon as possible at the earliest. How do you embrace new technology and all of that? So, yeah, these are 5 different stories and how you need to focus on various skills, various aspects of your personality as far as answering these questions is concerned. If you have ever struggled in making your stories clear and concise, you are not the only one. And this is where an AI tool like ChatGPT can help you prep for your interview. I'll share with you 3 ways in which you can leverage ChatGPT. The first is in structuring and making your stories tighter. A lot of times we know what stories we want to tell, but it often comes out very scattered, very rambly, and all of that. If you have key points at the top of your head, just put those key points into ChatGPT and say, can you please structure this story in a star format? And ChatGPT will put your story in situation, task, action, result format and present you in a very concise manner. If you still find anything which you find a little bit excess, you can go ahead and remove it. This technique or this strategy or this use case is very helpful if you are trying to translate your stories from one language to the other. Second, simulating interview follow-up questions. Once you have your star story or draft ready, go to ChatGPT and ask, can you give me 5 follow-up questions that an interviewer might ask after this answer? And there, ChatGPT can give you a couple of different questions that an interviewer might ask after you share this story. That's where you will see this story in a totality beyond what you have already shared. There might be some follow-up questions like, what did you learn? Oh, how bad was the situation? Or anything that you might have missed in adding your answer itself. When you get those follow-up questions, it will be easier for you to reflect a little bit more on the same situation from different angles and add or prepare answers that might add little more detail and depth to the overall interview. Third, identifying gaps or missing depth. If you have written your story a couple of times and you are not sure if it's still perfect or not, you can go to ChatGPT and ask, what does this story lack? And ChatGPT might come back to you and tell you things like, if your situation is not good enough, if the task that you have highlighted need more tension, your action is too generic, or your results need a little bit more quantitative metric. So you can use ChatGPT as your feedback partner as far as your story is concerned. This will help if you have written your story a couple of times and you still need a fresh pair of eyes to look into it. Now, just to wrap it up, storytelling is a very powerful technique. This is something that helps you close the sale. It helps you get the job. So it's really important that you focus on preparing for your stories and adding as much depth and making it rich. Now, if you like what you see, please share it with whoever it might help. And if you have any questions, any thoughts, any clarifications, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I read my comments and answer wherever, whatever I can. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.